Hello, everyone. It's Case in Point. I'm back with another review. I had a double feature horror film on Friday night, and the first one that I got was Obsession. So let's talk about it. Now, before we get into this review, I want to make one thing perfectly clear. I am not a horror person whatsoever. That doesn't mean I dislike horror. It's just not the first choice when I go to see a movie. I absolutely appreciate a great horror film when I see it. I would just rather do it in my own home rather than in theater. I tell you that Obsession immediately jumped into my number one movie of the year. I need to understand how insane of a statement that is coming from me. Going into the film, I saw people praising it everywhere. Social media was blasted with Obsession. They're calling it captivating, unsettling, intense, and easily one of the best horror films that have been made in recent memory. But I intentionally avoided all these reviews just so that I could go into it with a clean slate. And I'm very glad that I did, because from the opening moment with Bear talking into the screen, I was invested. Michael Johnson does a fantastic job of portraying somebody who constantly feels trapped inside their own thoughts. He's anxious, he's overthinking, and he's constantly trying to make sense of situations that are essentially impossible to understand to himself. And because of that, you connect with him almost immediately. Then there's Nikki, and wow, Indy Navarrete completely steals this movie. Every scene involving Nikki creates this moment of uncertainty. Not because you're waiting for a jump scare, not because the movie is constantly screaming in your face, but because you are sitting there in anxiety waiting for something to happen. That's what makes Obsession so effective. It is a slow burn in terms of the scary elements that are coming from the film. Fear comes from anticipation. The fear comes from tension. And the fear comes from the fact that you think something is wrong, even though actively there's nothing happening. My favorite example of this is Nikki watching Bear sleep for the first time. Her sitting in the corner of that room when you don't even notice that she's there at first glance, and she goes into this like very low, high-pitched voice, and you see the face of her change and just screaming, not knowing what's happening, why Bear doesn't love her, and her movement of what she's doing is ridiculously like captivating, but also so unsettling. Then she moves across the room, she grabs the flower pot, she comes back, and the tension is building of you thinking that something is going to happen or something is going to be on the other side of that flower pot. Of when you see her in the corner of the room, you saw her face change there, you think it's going to happen with the flower pot, but then it just quiets down. She puts it down, she gets into bed, she goes, I'm fine. Like, what? But with every film, there are things that didn't work. So let's talk about that really quick. The One Wish Willow. The more that the movie hinted that something was going on with Nikki in the background, the more I was invested. When Nikki appears in bed and she essentially begs for death, when she is seemingly, her consciousness is seemingly aware that something is happening, those are the moments that I want to dive into. She's trying to communicate with Bear even though she isn't fully in control. She's saying that whoever this is that you are with right now is sleeping. I'm here and I need you to kill me. I wanted to understand what was possessing her. I wanted to know more about the rules and the mythology of everything, more about the One Wish Willow itself. And we know that it's there because Bear called the line and they said, do you want to talk to Nikki? And Nikki is screaming in agony. She's there somewhere, but where? Who are these people that are able to do this to her? And honestly, if the movie explored those things more deeply, I don't think there could have been anything stopping me from giving this a perfect score, and probably would have been one of my favorite films of the decade. That's how much I loved this concept. The other thing that didn't work for me is the mention of the subplot with Ian and Nikki fooling around without telling anybody. When that was introduced, I was like, oh, okay, we're introducing this trope now. Like, it definitely wasn't needed. It didn't affect the storyline at all. Even when Bear and Ian were interacting near the end, and he's like, oh, this is what it was about. Bear was like, no, I don't care. It wasn't a big thing. It didn't need to be a thing. Now, I don't think it ruined everything. It's far from it, obviously. But compared to everything else in the movie, it was the least interesting element. That said, these complaints are very minor compared to how much I enjoyed the film overall. The performances were excellent, the tension was excellent, the atmosphere was excellent, and the film never relied on cheap scares to keep you engaged. It trusted the audience, it trusted the characters, and it trusted the story. And obviously this came out at the same time as Backrooms, and I have genuinely not seen a theater more packed for two horror films in my life, which is an amazing sight to see for two young film creators who are able to have this kind of draw for audiences. Seeing that kind of a turnout for a horror movie was phenomenal. And it really felt like everybody wanted to experience these films together. And that's how I felt in the theater with Obsession. Everyone was reacting, everyone was laughing, everyone was scared. It was great. And after watching it, now I completely understand everybody's opinion on it. So where do I land on Obsession? I give it a 4.5 out of 5 on Letterboxd, which is about a 9 out of 10 overall if you do the 10 rating scale. An incredible score for me. And if the movie expanded on the One Wish Willow mythology and kind of left out some of the things that were not necessary, we're talking about a perfect score here. If you've seen Obsession, let me know what you think. And if you haven't yet, please, I highly recommend checking it out, especially if you don't even mess with horror films like that. Until next time, that's my case in point.